The sun set slowly over a dusty, barren world. Ethan, a mechanic from Earth, had been walking for hours across the endless desert. His boots kicked up small clouds of red dust as he trudged forward, eyes scanning the horizon for anything that could give him a reason to keep going. His mind was tired, his body even more so, but he couldn't stop. He was on a mission. He was always on a mission. Ethan had been sent to this remote planet to investigate a distress signal. But so far all he had found was empty wasteland. No civilization, no signs of life, just rocks, sand, and more sand. He had been out here for days with no luck. His water was almost gone, and his food supplies were running low. Ethan had been in tough spots before, but nothing like this. It felt like he was walking into nothingness. A void in space and time. Just as Ethan began to think he might be walking to his doom, something changed. A faint glimmer of light caught his attention in the distance, something out of place in the otherwise flat, lifeless terrain. It was faint at first, almost like an illusion. Was it a trick of the light, or perhaps his mind was playing tricks on him? He wasn't sure, but he had to find out. He quickened his pace, heart pounding, hoping the light wasn't some mirage. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the desert as he approached the source. And then, as he crested a small dune, he saw it. The Titanic Starship. It was like something out of an old Earth history book. The ship was massive, larger than any spaceship Ethan had ever seen. Its broken and decaying hull was covered in layers of dust, making it look ancient, as though it had been lying here for centuries. Parts of it had collapsed in on themselves, with twisted metal and shattered glass scattered all around. The ship's enormous shape was hard to comprehend from a distance, as it stretched high into the orange sky. Ethan could barely believe his eyes. His footsteps slowed as he got closer, unsure whether to approach. The silence around him was thick, almost suffocating. It felt like the ship had been abandoned for ages, forgotten by everyone and everything. Still, Ethan was drawn to it. He had never seen anything like this in his career as a mechanic. The starship had an aura of mystery around it, a sense that it was more than just an old piece of junk. There was something strange about the way it lay there in the desert, like it was waiting for someone to come. A faint hum vibrated in the air, so soft it was almost impossible to hear, but Ethan could feel it in his bones. It was as if the ship was calling to him. Ethan took a deep breath, adjusting the strap of his bag and pulling a small handheld scanner from his belt. As he powered it up, the device flickered on with a soft beep, and the screen showed a series of strange readings. The ship's energy levels were off the charts. The ship was dead. It should have been. There was no way this old thing could still be functioning. Yet somehow, the scanner detected power. Something deep within the ship was still alive. Curiosity overcame him. He walked closer to the ship, his boots crunching on the broken metal and scattered debris. The outer hull was scratched and battered, clearly showing the marks of time and battle. Ethan ran his hand over the ship's surface, feeling the heat coming off it. It was strange. The heat wasn't from the sun. It was coming from within the ship, like it was still operating. Ethan knew it was dangerous to approach a wreck like this. The ship could be booby-trapped, or worse, it could be unstable. But his instincts told him to go inside. This wasn't just any abandoned starship. It was something special. He could feel it, with a steady breath. He found an entrance on the side of the ship. The massive doors, once strong and sturdy, were now warped and bent from years of neglect. With some effort, he managed to pry open a section of the door, revealing a dark corridor. A gust of cool, stale air rushed out, carrying with it the smell of rust and old machinery. The air inside was thick, but it didn't seem like the ship was entirely dead. There was still a faint pulse of energy, a spark of life within the wreck. Ethan's heart raced with excitement. What kind of ship was this? Who had built it, and why had it been abandoned here, in the middle of nowhere? The questions filled his mind as he stepped into the dark. Quiet ship. His flashlight flickered on, casting long shadows as he walked deeper into the ship. The walls were covered in strange alien symbols, some of which Ethan couldn't understand. It looked like a mix of ancient technology and something far beyond anything humanity had ever created. He passed by ruined control rooms, shattered glass screens, and rusted panels that seemed to hide more than they revealed. The ship was huge, too huge for one person to explore in a single day. Yet Ethan felt drawn to a particular section of the ship, a central chamber that seemed to hum with energy. As he approached the chamber, his scanner beeped again, this time with an urgent tone. The energy levels were spiking. The ship was more than just a dormant relic. It was alive, somehow, still connected to something. With every step closer, Ethan's excitement grew. What he didn't know yet was that this ship, this Titanic Starship, was not just abandoned, it was waiting for him. and as he entered the heart of the ship, he would soon discover that he had found far more than just a forgotten vessel. He had found a powerful force, one that could change the fate of the galaxy forever. The mystery was just beginning. Ethan's pulse quickened as he stepped deeper into the ship. The walls, lined with alien symbols and strange machinery, seemed to whisper with each step. His flashlight's beam danced across the decaying interior, revealing the haunting remnants of a once mighty vessel. The deeper he ventured, the more the air grew thick with mystery. It was as if the ship itself was alive, waiting for him to uncover its secrets. His scanner flickered in his hand, showing erratic energy readings. The ship was not just an old hunk of metal abandoned in the desert. No, this was something far more complex. The signs were all there, an ancient but powerful technology, one that hadn't been touched in centuries. Every flicker of light and every hum of the ship's systems felt like an invitation. Ethan couldn't ignore it. He had to know what was inside. He walked cautiously through the narrow corridors, his mind racing. Each turn led him further into the heart of the ship. He passed rooms filled with strange machines, some unrecognizable, others looking like relics from a forgotten era. They were all silent now, frozen in time. But despite the stillness, Ethan sensed something, a faint hum from deep within the ship. It grew louder the further he went, as though something buried deep within the ship was trying to wake up. The hallway opened up into a vast chamber, its size so immense that Ethan's flashlight barely reached the far walls. The ceiling was high, lost in shadows, and in the center of the room stood a massive console, glowing with a dim, eerie light. The walls surrounding the console were covered in thick cables and mechanical parts, most of which were old and corroded, but a few seemed oddly intact. He felt a cold chill run down his spine as his feet echoed on the metal floor. He approached the console, his breath catching in his throat. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, the hum of the ship intensified. It was as if the ship had recognized his presence. The console flickered, and a holographic display burst to life before his eyes. Data streams flooded the air, and strange symbols filled the space around him. Ethan's heart raced. The display was alive, active. His eyes widened as he realized what he was looking at. This wasn't just a control panel. It was the heart of the ship. It was a sophisticated, living system, much more advanced than anything he had ever seen. The data displayed on the hologram wasn't just random numbers. It was a message, or at least part of one. The symbols were foreign, but there was one thing he understood. The message was pleading for help. A shiver ran through him. The ship, in some form or another, was trying to communicate. The message was clear. It needed a human. But why? What had happened to it? Ethan's fingers hovered over the console, hesitating. If he activated this, if he unlocked its secrets, would he be unleashing something dangerous? Or was he the key to reviving a forgotten force, one that could change everything? Before he could make a decision, the ship's systems reacted. A low rumble filled the room, and the walls seemed to vibrate with power. Lights flickered, then steadied. The hum he had heard earlier grew louder, now a steady pulse. The ship was alive. It wasn't just a machine anymore, it was an entity, waiting to be awakened. Suddenly, a voice boomed in his mind, deep and metallic, as if the ship itself was speaking directly to him. Human, help me. The words echoed through his thoughts, not with sound, but with a presence, a demand. The ship's voice was ancient, as if it had been waiting for centuries for someone to answer. Ethan stumbled back, his heart hammering in his chest. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he knew one thing for certain. The ship was alive, and it was calling out to him. The holographic display shifted, showing a map of distant stars and planets, some marked in red. Ethan's eyes traced the lines, connections, pathways, systems. It was as if the ship was calculating, analyzing, waiting for him to make a move. One by one, the panels around the chamber lit up, showing cryptic symbols and readings that Ethan didn't fully understand, but he could feel that there was something immense and powerful deep within this ship. Something that had been dormant, hidden from the universe, for ages. He swallowed hard. This wasn't just any starship. This was something far more dangerous. A weapon. A galactic superweapon. A loud crash echoed from somewhere deeper within the ship, breaking his thoughts. Ethan froze. Was he alone? Was there someone or something else on board? His heart pounded as he glanced around the room, but the darkness beyond the walls seemed unyielding. The crash came again, followed by a deep rumbling, like the ship was waking from a long slumber. The power in the ship surged, sending a tremor through the ground beneath his feet. The ship's systems were coming online. Ethan knew he had to make a decision. He could walk away, leave this forgotten relic to continue gathering dust, or he could stay and attempt to unlock its true potential. But what if he was wrong? What if he unleashed something beyond his control? The voice returned, stronger this time. Human, awaken me. I am more than you know. His breath caught in his throat. Ethan could feel it now, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The ship was pleading, but was it desperate, or was it offering him power? He reached out, his fingers brushing the controls again. This time, he didn't hesitate. The console came alive under his touch. The entire room seemed to pulse with energy as the starship's systems roared to life, each layer of the ship awakening in response. A powerful surge of energy shot through the room, and Ethan staggered back as the ship's lights blazed to life, brighter than before. The walls hummed with power. He could hear the engines stirring, their dormant might awakening. The ship had called him, and now, it was waking up. The questions swirled in Ethan's mind, faster than he could process. What had happened to this ship? Who had built it? And most importantly, what was its true purpose? As the ship rumbled to life, Ethan could only wonder, had he just unleashed a force that could reshape the galaxy, for better or for worse? The mystery of the abandoned Titanic Starship was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun, and Ethan, standing alone in the heart of this massive ship, now found himself at the center of something far bigger than he could have ever imagined. The journey had only just begun. Ethan's heart raced as the ship's energy surged around him. He had felt it in his bones, felt the pulse of power as the ship came to life. The air hummed, vibrating with an intensity he had never experienced before. The lights above flickered, then steadied into a constant glow, illuminating the vast chamber he stood in. The ship, or whatever it truly was, had awakened, but something inside him whispered that this was only the beginning. The holographic display in front of him shifted, showing new information, glowing lines and symbols swirling in intricate patterns. The data was beyond his understanding, but one thing was clear: the ship was alive, and it was looking to him for something. He stepped back, his eyes wide, trying to process the overwhelming sensation of power radiating from the ship's core. Then came a sadder, low rumble beneath his feet. It wasn't just the ship's engine, it was something deeper. Ethan felt the floor beneath him shift. The ship was moving. His stomach tightened as the rumble grew louder, vibrating through his chest. Was the ship taking flight? Was it going somewhere? Suddenly, a door on the far side of the room opened with a hiss. Ethan's eyes snapped toward it. The corridor beyond was dark, but there was a faint glow coming from within. It called to him, like a pull, as if the ship had designed this moment. Ethan hesitated for a brief second, fear and curiosity battling within him. The ship wanted him to follow, but why? What was waiting for him in the depths of this monstrous machine? He took a deep breath, steeling himself. With one final glance at the now dormant control console, he walked toward the open door. The ship's silence was deafening, a heavy stillness that only made the strange hum of its engines more unsettling. As he passed through the doorway, the air grew colder. The dim light illuminated a vast hallway, lined with strange symbols and more alien technology. The walls seemed to pulse gently, as if the ship was breathing. Alive and aware of his presence, Ethan's hand brushed against the wall as he walked, feeling the texture of the metallica but warmer than it should have been. The walls felt alive too, as if they were made of something organic, something more than metal. He couldn't quite place it, but it felt like the ship was aware of him, its consciousness interacting with his every move. He reached a turn in the corridor, and before him stood a large, heavy door. This one was different from the others. There was no handle, no visible way to open it, but Ethan felt something, an unspoken invitation. He reached out, placing his palm flat against the door. It hummed under his touch, a vibration that seemed to resonate in his chest. Then, with a soft click, the door slid open, revealing a massive chamber. Inside, there was nothing like what he had seen so far. The room was filled with large, towering structures, reminiscent of control panels, but far more complex, almost alive in their design. Pulsing veins of light ran along their surfaces, glowing in shifting colors. In the center of the room there was a massive pillar stretching toward the ceiling, its core glowing with an intense blue light. The ship's heart. Ethan stepped forward, his eyes locked on the pillar. It was unlike anything he had seen before. The light from the core seemed to beckon him, pulling him closer. He couldn't explain it, but something deep inside him told him this was the source of the power, the center of everything. His footsteps echoed through the chamber as he made his way toward it. As he approached, the pillar seemed to respond to his presence. The light pulsed, expanding, then contracting, like a heartbeat. Ethan felt a deep pull, as though the ship's consciousness was reaching out to him, urging him to come closer. Without thinking, he reached out a hand, brushing the surface of the glowing pillar. The moment his fingers touched it, the entire room seemed to come alive. A voice filled his mind, low and powerful, the same deep, metallic voice he had heard earlier. But now, it was clearer, more urgent. Human, you have found it, the heart, the key. Ethan staggered back, his heart pounding. His thoughts were a blur. The ship, the Titanic Starship, wasn't just a weapon. It was something more, something ancient, something that had been waiting for him, waiting for someone to find it. The voice continued, its tone filled with desperation. The war is coming. You must choose. Awaken the power, or seal it away forever. The room seemed to shift around him. The air thickened, and the hum of the ship's core grew louder. Ethan's mind was spinning. He wasn't prepared for this. He hadn't come here to awaken some galactic super. He was just a mechanic. But the power before him, it was impossible to ignore. Choose, human, the voice commanded again, louder this time. You must awaken the weapon, or let it die. Ethan stood frozen in place, unable to move. The weight of the decision pressed on him like an invisible force. The ship had been waiting for a human, a mechanic, to awaken it, and now that he had, it was offering him something he couldn't even comprehend. The power to control it, the power to change the galaxy. But at what cost? He glanced around the room, his eyes darting from the glowing pillar to the intricate machinery surrounding it. There were buttons, levers, and switches, tools of control. It was as though the ship had been designed for him to operate it, to awaken its dormant power. As he stood there, paralyzed by indecision, the room seemed to pulse again, urging him to act. He knew that every second he hesitated could bring him closer to unleashing something that might be impossible to stop. The ship's voice echoed in his mind, as if sensing his fear. Choose, human, the fate of all is in your hands. For a moment, Ethan felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was standing on the edge of something monumental. The ship's power was now his to command. But as the light of the core flickered and hummed, Ethan knew that with great power came an even greater burden, that it was time to decide. Ethan's mind raced as he stood before the glowing pillar, the ship's voice still echoing in his mind, urging him to make a decision. He could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him, a burden so heavy it nearly made his knees buckle. The ship, the Titanic Starship, was waiting. But waiting for what? For him to awaken it, to unlock its terrible power. Or was it something far worse? The uncertainty clawed at his thoughts, making it harder to think clearly. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls pulsing with a rhythmic, almost hypnotic hum. The light from the pillar flickered, casting long shadows across the metallic surfaces, stretching them out like dark fingers reaching for him. He could almost feel the ship breathing, as if it had become a living entity, alive with the ancient power coursing through its veins. He shook his head, trying to clear the swirling thoughts. He needed to focus. He had been a mechanic his entire life, nothing more. Yet here he was, standing in the heart of a ship that held unimaginable power, a weapon that could reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. What could he possibly do with such power? Could he really control it? Or would it consume him, just as it had consumed the creators of this ship, leaving nothing but destruction in its wake? The hum of the ship grew louder, urging him to act. The pillar before him seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, its energy practically crackling in the air. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the cold air of the ship fill his lungs, and stepped closer to the glowing core. His hand hovered over the surface, the warmth radiating from it, inviting him to make his move. As his fingers brushed against the pillar, the room seemed to shake. The light intensified, enveloping him in a brilliant glow. His skin prickled with the power flowing through the ship, and his vision blurred as the ship's systems surged to life. In an instant, the walls around him flickered and shifted, showing new data streams, star maps, and cryptic symbols that flashed across the holographic displays. It was as if the ship was communicating with him, showing him its ancient knowledge, its purpose, and the terrifying potential it held. The voice returned, deeper now, its tone filled with urgency. Human, you have awakened me. Now, the galaxy's fate rests in your hands. You can control it, or you can destroy it. The choice is yours. Ethan's heart thudded in his chest as he struggled to process what he was hearing. The ship was no longer just an abandoned relic. It was alive, and it had been waiting for someone to unlock its power. But what kind of power was this? Could one man really be trusted with such a weapon? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He stepped back, trying to make sense of what was happening. The ship was fully awake now, and it was speaking directly to him. Its systems, once dormant, were now humming with energy, ready to be controlled. Ethan had no doubt that the ship's capabilities were beyond anything he could imagine. The question was, could he wield it without destroying everything around him? The ship's voice seemed to read his mind. You fear what you do not understand, but you have the power to change the course of history, human. The galaxy is on the brink of war. The time has come to awaken the weapon, to bring balance to the stars. Only you can make this choice. The pressure weighed heavily on Ethan as he glanced around the room. The ship's data streams continued to flash, showing him images of distant worlds, some lush and vibrant, others dark and barren. He saw star systems on the edge of destruction, planets in turmoil, their fates hanging by a thread, and in the center of it all, the ship, its power capable of tipping the scales in favor of those who controlled it. But Ethan wasn't sure if he could be that person. He had always been just a mechanic, fixing machines, repairing engines, keeping things running. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. Could he really be the one to make this kind of decision? The weight of responsibility was almost too much to bear. The voice returned, this time softer, almost coaxing. You do not need to be a hero, human. You need only to make the right choice. The weapon is not evil. It is only a tool you can use to protect or destroy. The galaxy is on the brink of chaos. It needs someone who can wield its power, someone with the strength to make the difficult decisions. Ethan's hands trembled as he looked at the pillar, the light now a blinding beacon in the center of the room. He could feel the power calling to him, tempting him to take control. But what if he was wrong? What if he unleashed something he couldn't control? What if the ship wasn't just a weapon, it was a ticking time bomb, waiting for the wrong person to awaken it? The ship's systems hummed louder now, responding to his hesitation. Fear will not save the galaxy. You must act. The time for choice is now. Ethan took another deep breath, steeling himself. His mind raced, but one thought stood out among the chaos. He had to act. The galaxy needed someone to make this decision, and it seemed that person was him. He had been brought here for a reason. The ship had chosen him whether he was ready for it or not. With a surge of determination, Ethan placed both hands on the glowing pillar. The moment he touched it, the ship's energy surged through him, filling his veins with raw, electrifying power. The walls around him flickered, showing visions of battles, fleets of ships, and the destruction of entire worlds. He could see the consequences of his choice playing out before him, but he knew it was too late to turn back now. The ship's voice echoed one final time, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to shake the very air around him. You have chosen, human. The weapon is yours. The pillar's light intensified, filling the room with a blinding glow. Ethan's senses overwhelmed with the ship's power, and for a moment, he felt like he was no longer himself. The ship's consciousness, its ancient knowledge, flowed through him, and he could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on his shoulders. The decision was made. Ethan had awakened the weapon. Now, there was no turning back. The power was undeniable. Ethan stood in the center of the ship, the weight of his decision heavy on his chest. The ship, now fully awake, seemed to pulse with energy, every wall vibrating with the raw force he had just unleashed. His fingertips still tingled with the remnants of the ship's power, as if the very fabric of the vessel was alive and had chosen him to be its master. But even as the hum of the ship grew stronger, a question lingered in his mind, unspoken but undeniable. What had he done? The images from the ship's core still flashed in his mind, the star systems in flames, the planets on the brink of collapse, the fleets of warships positioned across the galaxy, ready for conflict. Ethan had always been a mechanic, someone who fixed things, made them work. He never imagined he'd be at the center of something like this. But the ship was now his responsibility, its immense power now under his command. And with that power came a terrifying realization. The ship had been dormant for so long, hidden away on this forgotten planet. Its systems had been waiting for someone, anyone, to come along and awaken it. And now that Ethan had made the choice, the ship's call had spread across the stars. The galaxy, once unaware of this ancient weapon, now knew that it had returned. And the question was no longer about whether to use it, but how. Ethan took a step back from the glowing pillar, still feeling the pulse of the ship beneath his feet. His mind raced. The ship's systems were fully operational, but with every burst of energy, every hum of power, he could feel the weight of the responsibility crushing him. The voice returned, deep and clear, almost as if it had been waiting for him to realize the enormity of the situation. Human, the time has come. The galaxy is unstable, fractured. You are the one who can control the fate of these worlds. You will decide who lives, who dies, who thrives, and who suffers. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, trying to center himself. This wasn't a responsibility he had ever wanted. He had never trained for this. He had been a simple mechanic, someone who fixed engines and engines alone. Yet here he was, standing in the heart of an ancient warship capable of destroying entire civilizations. The power to change the fate of the galaxy rested on his shoulders. He could feel the ship, its consciousness, urging him forward, guiding him with the knowledge of its past. But with each passing second, Ethan could feel the seductive pull of the ship's power. The ship's voice was almost comforting now, reassuring him that he had made the right choice, that he was in control. Yet, that was precisely what scared him, the idea that the ship's power might be too much, that the very force he had awakened might be the one thing that would tear the galaxy apart. Power is not meant to be feared, the ship's voice boomed. It is meant to be wielded. You are the key to its use, and I will help you. The words echoed in Ethan's mind. They felt like a whisper at first, almost like a suggestion, but the more he listened, the more they sounded like a command. The ship wanted him to control it, to use it to bring order to the chaos of the galaxy. But at what cost? As Ethan paced through the dimly lit corridors, the ship's systems fed him endless streams of information. He could see the distant stars, the trembling planets, the factions at war with one another. Some of them, he realized, were close to extinction. The ship's power could save them, could reshape the galaxy. But at the same time, it could destroy everything it touched. Could he be the one to decide who should be saved and who should be sacrificed? The decision seemed too great for one person, let alone someone who had spent his life fixing broken machines. Ethan's hands shook as he ran them over the control panels, scattered throughout the ship. He could feel the connection between him and the starship. He could hear its pulse, its hum, as if it were calling to him, asking him to make the next move. And yet, the more he tried to ignore it, the more it grew louder, pressing him to choose, to act. To begin the next phase of its awakening, the door ahead of him slid open with a quiet hiss, revealing a vast control room that stretched out like an arena. The massive space was lined with consoles and holographic interfaces, each one flashing with data, maps of star systems, and military deployments. Ethan could see the calculated movements of distant ships, the signs of impending battles, the delicate balance of power hanging by a thread. He had access to it all now, every secret, every plan. The ship had connected him to the pulse of the galaxy, and it was clear that it had been built to respond to a single, guiding hand. His hand. He stood before the central command console, the heart of the ship's control. His fingers hovered over the interface. He could feel the immense power at his fingertips, ready to be unleashed. But with that power came the realization that he was no longer just a mechanic. He was a decision-maker, a ruler of sorts. A mere twist of his hand could alter the course of history. Human, the ship's voice echoed, breaking through his thoughts. You are ready. The galaxy awaits your command. Ethan stared at the holographic map in front of him, showing the vast expanse of the galaxy. The ship was now fully under his control. He had the power to decide the fate of countless worlds, to reshape the political landscape, to end wars before they began. The very fabric of existence was laid bare before him. But at what cost? The realization hit him harder than the hum of the ship's core. True power was never clean, never simple. It came with choices, with consequences. He wasn't just fixing a broken machine anymore. He was holding the future in his hands, and no matter what he chose, there would be no going back. The galaxy had already felt his presence, and now, it was up to him to decide how to wield that power. As the ship's voice continued to press him, urging him forward, Ethan knew that no matter what happened next, his life and the fate of the galaxy would never be the same. The ship's presence was overwhelming, its hum vibrating through Ethan's entire body. He could feel it in his chest, a low thrum that seemed to come from deep within the vessel's core. It was no longer just a machine. It was something more. The Titanic Starship had become a living force, an entity waiting for him to make a choice, an impossible choice. Ethan paced back and forth in the control room, his hands shaking, mind racing with the implications of what he had just uncovered. He could no longer deny the truth. The ship was a weapon of mass destruction capable of altering the balance of power in the galaxy. Its systems were vast, stretching across star systems, capable of eradicating entire fleets or protecting the innocent. It was a tool that could be used for peace or for utter destruction. The holographic map before him displayed a galaxy on the brink of chaos. He could see it now, the fractures spreading across it like a web of cracks in an ancient glass. Factions at war, political turmoil, resources dwindling, and entire planets teetering on the edge of collapse. It was a galaxy in need of a savior, and the ship was offering him the power to be that savior. But that's where the dilemma started. Ethan wasn't a hero. He wasn't even a soldier. He was just a mechanical fixer of broken things. He had spent his life repairing engines, restoring machines to their original glory. But this wasn't a broken machine. This was a force unlike anything he had ever imagined, and now it was his to control. The voice of the ship echoed in his mind once more, deep and steady, almost comforting. You are the one chosen to wield my power. The galaxy has been waiting for you. Ethan shook his head, a sense of dread settling in his stomach. Chosen? He didn't ask for this. He hadn't wanted to be chosen. He never even wanted to find this ship. Yet, here he was, standing at the heart of it, with the weight of the galaxy resting on his shoulders. He turned away from the holographic map, needing to clear his head. The walls around him seemed to close in, the ship's presence becoming suffocating. His eyes darted around the room, desperate for something to ground him. The blinking lights, the steady hum, the symbols on the walls, they were all so alien, so foreign. Nothing in his life had prepared him for this. His fingers instinctively reached for the console again, and the moment they touched it, the room shifted. The holograms before him flickered, and new data streamed across his vision. This time, the ship's systems were showing him something different. A series of images flashed, each one more vivid than the last. It was a vision of the future, a future that could unfold depending on the choices he made. One image showed a peaceful planet lush and green, its people thriving in harmony. Another showed a war-torn world, its cities in ruins, the skies filled with smoke. A third flashed before him, a desolate planet, its surface scorched, lifeless. The ship was showing him possibilities, futures that could exist depending on the way he wielded its power. It was overwhelming, the sheer responsibility of it all. Ethan felt his knees weaken, and he gripped the console for support. How could he make a decision like this? How could one person, one mechanic, decide the fate of an entire galaxy? The ship's voice seemed to soften, as though it sensed his inner turmoil. Human, the galaxy will change. It is inevitable, but you control how it changes. You can bring peace, you can bring order, or you can let it fall into chaos. The weight of the decision pressed down harder than ever. Ethan's breath came in shallow gasps as he processed the ship's words. Peace, order, chaos. Could he really be the one to shape the galaxy's future? Could he choose the path of salvation or destruction? The ship had been dormant for centuries, waiting for someone to awaken it. Someone like him. He had thought of himself as just a mechanic, someone who could fix things, bring them back to life. But this wasn't just about fixing a broken machine anymore. This was about deciding the fate of billions of lives he didn't even know. He stepped away from the console, pacing again. His mind raced. He could see the consequences of both paths laid before him. If he chose peace, he could use the ship's power to end wars, to bring about an era of prosperity. He could protect those who were vulnerable, ensure that the galaxy's resources were shared and used wisely. The ship's weapon could be a force for good, a tool for defense, for balance. But the other path scared him. The power to destroy was just as real as the power to protect. He could use the ship to crush those who stood in his way, to dominate the galaxy. With its weaponry, he could topple empires, wipe out entire fleets, burn worlds to the ground. The ship had been built for war, and war was easy to ignite. The temptation to wield that kind of power, it was intoxicating. And yet, as tempting as it was, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that such power would consume him. He wasn't a conqueror. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't meant to decide who lived and who died. He was a mechanic, a man who fixed things, not a man who destroyed them. He returned to the console, his hands trembling as he stared at the map again. The factions, the battles, the suffering, it was all there, laid out before him. His heart twisted in his chest as he looked at the planets on the verge of collapse, the innocent lives caught in the crossfire. This wasn't about power anymore. It was about saving them. He could save them. He could be the one who turned the tide. With a deep breath, Ethan's fingers moved over the console once more, this time with more resolve. He wasn't going to be a destroyer. He wasn't going to give in to the darkness that the ship offered. The galaxy needed peace, not war. And if the ship's power could bring that peace, then he would find a way to use it for good. The holographic map shifted, showing the paths he could take to restore balance, to repair the broken parts of the galaxy. It was a long road, one filled with difficult decisions and unimaginable challenges. But Ethan knew one thing for sure now. He wasn't going to let the ship dictate the galaxy's fate. He would be the one to decide. With newfound determination, Ethan set his course. The ship's power was now his, but so was his resolve. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since stepping onto this forgotten world, he felt ready to face it. The galaxy would change, and he would make sure it changed for the better. Ethan's fingers hovered above the control panel, his mind torn between the vast power at his fingertips and the overwhelming responsibility that came with it. The ship's core hummed, its energy pulsing through every fiber of his being, as though it was waiting for him to make the final move. The choices he had made so far seemed inconsequential compared to the one that lay ahead. The future of the galaxy hung on this moment, and it felt like the weight of an entire universe was pressing down on his shoulders. As he stared at the holographic map before him, the stars and planets stretching out into the abyss of space, a deep sense of clarity washed over him. He could see the intricate connections between everything: the planets, the factions, the people, lore woven together by a delicate thread of fate. It was all intertwined, and one small move could cause ripples that would change everything. The voice of the ship was there again, but this time it was quieter, almost respectful. "Human, the galaxy is yours to command. You have the power to save it, or to destroy it." Ethan closed his eyes, trying to clear his thoughts. He had spent so much time wrestling with the idea of wielding such power. The temptation to take control, to reshape the galaxy in his image, had been strong. But now, standing on the precipice of making the final decision, he realized something important. Power was nothing without purpose. It could destroy as easily as it could save. And the true test of strength wasn't in how much power he wielded, but in how he chose to use it. His mind wandered back to the images he had seen in the ship's core: devastated worlds, the ruined cities, the battles fought and won. He had seen the suffering, the pain, and the despair, but he had also seen hope, seen the spark of life in the midst of it all. There was a way forward, a way to use the ship's power not to conquer or dominate, but to protect, to heal, to rebuild. He could do it. He could stop the wars, end the bloodshed, and bring balance to the chaos. The ship was a tool meant to bring order, but only if it was wielded by someone who understood the consequences. Ethan had never wanted to be a leader, but in this moment, he understood that he had no choice. The galaxy needed him, whether he was ready or not. The decision wasn't easy, but it had already been made. He wasn't going to let the ship's power slip into the wrong hands. He wasn't going to let it become a force for destruction. The choices he had made had brought him here, and now, standing at the heart of the ship, he knew what he had to do. With a steady hand, he tapped the central console, and the ship responded instantly. The systems hummed, and the holographic map shifted, showing the galaxy once again. But this time, it was different. The planets no longer appeared as fractured, divided worlds, but as interconnected systems, with threads of light connecting them all. It was as if the ship had recognized his choice and had responded accordingly. The voice spoke again, but this time, it was different, softer, almost reverent. "Human, you have chosen wisely. The power you now command will not be used in haste. You will guide the galaxy, not as a ruler but as a protector." Ethan felt a strange warmth fill his chest. The ship's energy had changed, no longer pulsing with raw force, but flowing with a calm, steady rhythm. It was as if the ship itself had acknowledged the decision he had made and had accepted it. He stepped back from the console, his mind clearer than it had ever been. The galaxy was a vast and complex place, full of contradictions and struggles. But now, for the first time, he saw a path forward, a way to guide the galaxy towards something better. It wasn't about domination. It was about balance. The ship could be a weapon, but it could also be a shield. It could protect the innocent, defend the helpless, and stop the wars before they started. But only if it was used with wisdom, with restraint. Ethan turned toward the massive windows of the ship, gazing out into the vast expanse of space. The stars stretched out before him, each one representing a world, a people, a future. His future. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, battles to fight, and sacrifices to make. But for the first time, he felt ready. He wasn't alone in this. He had the ship, the power of the Titanic Starship. Yes, but more importantly, he had his own conviction. The power to change the galaxy didn't lie in the ship alone. It lay in the choices he made. He had chosen to protect, to preserve, to help. And as long as he remembered that, the galaxy would have a chance. His hand hovered above the control panel once again, but this time, there was no hesitation. He knew exactly what to do. He initiated the sequence that would send a signal to the galaxy, a message of hope, a call to arms. It wasn't a call to battle. It was a call to unity. The ship's systems came alive once again, its energy focused and controlled. The holograms of distant worlds flickered, showing signs of life, new alliances. Tentative but growing. It was the beginning of something, a new chapter in the galaxy's history. As the ship's engines powered up, Ethan looked back at the control room, now filled with a soft, steady light. The ship, the mighty Titanic Starship, was no longer just a weapon. It was a symbol of change, of hope, of the potential for a better future. And with that, the ship lifted off the surface of the barren world, its course set toward the stars. Ethan wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was something more, a protector, a guide, a force for peace. And the galaxy, for the first time in a long while, had hope.